All right, hello and welcome. Tonight's presentation, as you know, is Format, Design, and Shortcuts in Word. So just all about how to make your documents look good in Word, but also a little bit more than just look good. You want them to work the way they're supposed to. This is all about, when you're not the only one who's ever going to use a document. A lot of people will use Word their way, if it makes sense. Just out of curiosity, everybody knows how to use little buttons. I saw you using them where you can put a check or an X, or you can put, an emoji with some sunglasses on. But I want you to tell me, first of all, how confident are you in Word? If you are confident, use the little cool kid with the sunglasses. If you're not at all confident, you can use the little guy who looks very confused, or just the X if that's easier. So we've got some confident, we've got some X's, we've got a little bit of a mix. Okay. What I want to do is, show you the proper way to format something. And what I find with people with using Word is, some of you know things, really good things. You might know part of Word a lot better than me, and then not know other things that to me are very basic. I work with professional writers. I have 3 writers who work for me. And one of them has a diploma in technical writing. She cannot use the page break function to save her life. I've tried to teach her, and I even tried monetary incentives, like you need to start doing this. Doesn't work. So, if I'm going through something and I'm teaching something that to you seems really simple, just go with it and we'll move on to the next thing, because it might be something that the rest of the people have just never even known was there. So we'll hopefully get through that. But what I'm going to do is share my screen, and I'm just going to work through a document with you, because I started to build a presentation and put tips and tricks into PowerPoint to teach you how to use Word, and it wasn't making sense. In order to teach you, I've got to really show you. And I sent this document to you all before we started. I actually added to it since I sent it to you because I had another idea, but that doesn't really matter. The point is you've got the document, and I can show you how to do certain things in the document as we go. And you are welcome to sort of minimize WebEx if you like, follow along, and try to do what I do. If you find that too hard, this session is being recorded. You can go back to it later and later try to do what I do. So don't feel pressure. So I'm going to share my Microsoft Word. And here we go. So what I've got here, this is the part that I added is here because I sent you all an unformatted resume. And I decided to add a cover letter to it too, because that just kind of allows me to get all of the things I was thinking I wanted to teach you into one document, which is just really easy. So this is a unformatted document, just imagining that somebody just types it in, hit return at the end of the line, but otherwise did no formatting whatsoever. And quite clearly, you're not going to send a resume that looks like this. Granted, this cover letter is also just a standard how to write a cover letter. It's not a real one. This would all actually have actual names and addresses, but we can imagine for today. So I want to show you how to make this look good. I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks that can then also be applied to any other document that you're using. So whether you're creating a memo or a short report or whatever you might be tasked to do. So the first thing I like to do when I go into my document is immediately set the margins to where I want them. I may end up having to change them later if I need to squeeze a little bit more in, or if I need to actually make the document look more full. I'll make them bigger or smaller, but I like to start by setting them where I want them to be. And I always default to a 2 centimeter margin all the way around. It's a good sort of average, a nice amount of white space, but not too much, but lots of space around the edges for the sake of printing. If you go too close to the top or the bottom, you don't always get proper printing, so you want to leave a little bit of space at the edge. So I'm going to show you how to properly change your margins, because frequently what people do is they go up to here and they grab this little white thing and they move it. And they grab this guy and they move it. And it changes the margins for anything that is highlighted, whatever line that you're in, but it doesn't actually change the document margin. It just changes where the document is allowing print to be. So it's actually printing outside its margin, which later can lead to problems. It might make what you're doing look fine right now, but then if you have to change anything in the document later, it can cause issues. So you want to just actually change your margin. So you're going to go into Layout and into Margins. It's going to give you the presets. Last custom margin is 2 centimeters all around, which is what I always do, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to show you how to do it. So if you want a custom margin, you're going to go here. And then you enter the margin that you want. So I want 2 centimeters all around. Very simple, but it gets the job done. So now I've got my margins where I want them. And I've got a cover letter. And then I've got the resume starting here, and it's bumped up a little bit because I changed the margin. What you don't want to do, and what probably 80% of people will do at this point, is hit the return button and go 1, 2, 3 until it's on the next page. And I'll tell you why. Because later you realize that you have to add something to the cover letter. In this case, I also realized that I need more space between the date and the address so it's actually readable, right? So then all of a sudden, the top of the resume is shifting down this page here. In the end, what I really need is no matter how long this cover letter gets, even if it spills onto a second page, I still need my resume to start on a brand new page. So I want to go here and actually insert a page break, not a hard return. So again, I'm going to go into the Insert, and I can hit Page Break. I could also go into Layout. There are 2 ways to do this. And there's breaks. And if you hit that arrow, you can do a page break, you can do a column break. There's all kinds of others that we don't have to think about, but page break again. So that way, Max's first name hits at the very top of the next page, no matter what I do here. If I add 3 new paragraphs, I just copy and paste here to my letter. The letter gets quite long. It's still going to push Max to the next page. It's pretty simple in a 2-page document. It gets very, very important as soon as you're into, let's say, a report that has new sections. Every new section or chapter has to start on a new page. And if you're doing hard returns in an 80-page document, you're going to be pulling your hair out. So just a really good tip to always, always, always use the page break instead. You'll just save yourself so much hassle if you make that your habit. So next thing I want to do is make this somewhat readable, right? So I've got this letter. I've got an address here. I've got a date. I've got an address here. And then I've got a subject and a salutation, dear so-and-so. It's all blurring together. And the address here, if you look, is just, it's not spaced properly. So it's giving me 8 points of empty space below every line. I don't want that. I want it spaced singly and simply. So I can go into, I'm already in it, but if I was in Home, I'm going to go into my Layout menu. Very quickly, I can just click here on the spacing after the line. Oops, I went up instead of down, and just get rid of it. So there, my address is now formatted the way I want it to be. The other option, if I wanted to do that and a few other things, if you actually just open up the whole paragraph setting, you can change all of the spacing. Here's another thing that I actually didn't know yet. I would have realized it later. So I want to change that spacing. I don't want a spacing after. And I can see here that line spacing is actually set to multiple. So it's at 1.08. I don't want that. I want single. So I'm going to change that there too. And that's going to change everything here. What I should have done, and I didn't, just because I was showing you only one small example, is I actually want that to happen for the whole page, right? I don't want that weird spacing anywhere. So the other thing I can do now, I just made the changes I want to these 3 lines. I want all the other lines to be formatted the same way. So in my Home menu, there's this wonderful button, which is actually my favorite feature, I think, in Word. And it's just the Format Painter. So I want the other lines to look like this line. I click that button. I highlight all the other lines that I want to look the same. and it changes them all to look like that. Simple and fast. So then again, I've got to do my separating, so full name, title, name, address, and then I'm going to want a space after the address that I'm sending it to. And then I've got a job title. This is where if you're applying to a job, you're of course going to put the job title and potentially the job ID number, whatever other details you might need to put in your letter. So I want a space before and after that. And then I've got my dear so-and-so, and I want a space, and then a space between all paragraphs. Just hitting return, obviously. So closing line, sincerely, regards, etc. It's going to have a comma, but I always go at least 2 blank lines or 3, but that's more of a how to write a business letter than a how to format in Word. But generally, you're not usually signing. You might have a digital signature to insert, but even if you don't, it's just still customary to leave a little bit of space in between that. So there I've got my letter essentially formatted the way I want it. The other things you can do is you don't have to, but if you wanted it to be more centered on the page, like top down, you can hit enter a few times there and just sort of make it fit. I don't usually do that unless I've got a super short letter and it just looks awkward being, stuck in the very top sort of half of the page. And so there we are. The other thing you can do, you saw me go through here and put spaces in between all of my paragraphs. If you've got a document where all of the paragraphs and all of the lines are the same, if it's written text and it's just paragraph after paragraph and then a few titles, you can even make that easier and go back into your paragraph settings, excuse me, and you can request the space after each paragraph. So you can say I want 6-point or 12-point inserted after every paragraph, and then it automatically does it for you. So you start another paragraph here, you write, and another one, and it's giving me that space, right? So it's done automatically. It works really well that way as well. I don't usually do it because in resume formatting and in different, like a very specific document formatting, I sometimes don't want the exact same space after every element, and it just takes more time to go through and change settings for different blocks of text, and so I just find it easier to add them myself. But it's another great way to just automatically add that space. So then, okay, my cover letter is done, and that's relatively simple. All the details are there. So I get to the resume, and here we are. We've got a resume that's relatively, it's straightforward. It's not wrong, let's say, but it's also not very interesting to look at. So we want to make it look a little better for the sake of Max and try to find him a job in GK here. Max, by the way, is not real. This is a sample resume that I then made a specific to MFSE sample when I was teaching the YEP students about cover letters. So first thing I want to do is make his name stand out better, look better. You usually want your name to be the biggest thing on the top of a resume. So quite simple. Font size, I'm going to try 18. And I could underline, I can bold. What I actually like to do instead of underlining, especially for things like headings in a resume or the very top of a memo or report where you're putting your title, is I like to use a full line that goes across the page. So there are a couple of ways to do this, and I'm going to show you the way most people do it. Sorry, it's not there. It is where it's insert, shapes, and then lines. So then you put your cursor where you want the line to start, and you pull it across, and for some reason it's blue, but that doesn't matter. And you make it stretch the whole page. And it looks great. What I don't like about doing it this way is that I think my line is actually not straight. That's part of it. But also, let's say I also need to put one down here, and so I'm going to go again, insert, shape, line, and I want one under education as well. And then I build it. And then I look at it and I'm like, oh, is it the same length as the one above, or is it slightly smaller? I think it's slightly smaller, and so then I kind of keep playing with it. And everybody's going to have days where it works perfect, and then days where you just can't get the line straight, and it just won't work, and you can't make them all the same length, and it looks wrong. So the other way you can do that, I'm going to get rid of these now, and they're also hard to grab and move. So get rid of that, and trying to find it there. Get rid of that. I want a line under Max Sampson. I can use my borders and shading and just ask for a bottom border. I had this set on the last resume that I worked on for a double line, so I'm going to also actually have to change that. So you go into the very bottom of this, takes you into the full menu. So I don't want a double line for Max. I just want a single line, so I have to choose the style, and there's all kinds of styles. Maybe people go fancy, and we'll give them like one of these. I can choose a color. I want it black, but we can choose a color, and then you can choose a width. I think 3-point is going to be too much. I'm going to try 2 1/4. And then so I've changed it, but it hasn't changed yet until I actually click over here and tell it where I want that line. I can tell it to go on top and bottom. I know I don't want that, but you have options. You can get a whole box with that line around that piece of text. I just want it underneath. Okay. So now Max has his name set up this way. Underneath, I have his contact info. This because his family's in Germany and he's in university in Canada. He's listed 2 addresses for now, because until he gets back here in May or June, he's in Montreal, and then he'll be in Germany. So he's listed both. I don't need all that space between them. So I'm going to do what I did last time again and just go to layout and get rid of that. I think I'm even going to get rid of some of the space under his name, because I would like them to sit closer to that line. And because there's space underneath his name, they're not doing that. So let's go like that. And this just looks a little bit nicer. It might not be perfect, but it's a quick fix, right? The other thing you can do, obviously, is not necessarily leave it on the left of the page. So of course you can center your text or choose other options. So there we go, Max with his name, fancy line. And so that works well. Often if you're doing a memo, you might do the other option. So instead of there, you're going to go with a top border over Max and a bottom border, here. And so you'd have memo where his name is, and you might have a few details, and then follow with your memo. For a variety of sort of report headers. But I'll undo both of those and keep it sort of in resume format. So there we go. What I like to do is something similar for the formatting. So I'm actually going to copy that format, put it for education, but I don't want education to be as big. So I'm going to decrease my font just by hitting this decrease font size until I kind of get it looking like I want it to. No, I want it bigger than that. So I'm going to go with 13. And I'm going to put it over here, I think. After your header, you usually want, unless you're trying to squeeze everything in, you want a space. I don't want that much space. I'm going to go through here again and take out all of this extra spacing after the lines, because it's starting to bug me. Word's default settings will give you Calibri size 11 with 8-point font after every line or paragraph. So I'm always getting rid of that. I don't want multiple spacing. So there we go. So I've got education, and then I've got he's a Bachelor of Science student, biology major, 2017 to present. So what I like to do with dates is put them on the right of my document. So I have the info here, and I'm going to bold his degree, but I want his date way over here. And that's partly because I think it looks good, but it's also partly because as a resume writer, I know that recruiters like to see it that way. They like having the dates off to the right. You're not going to lose, points or anything if you don't do it, but it's just something that they happen to really appreciate. So I need to set a tab to put it over here. What a lot of people will do is, okay, so you've got your info, you put your date, and you hit tab, and then you hit tab, and then you hit tab, and tab, and tab, and tab, and tab, and tab, and tab. Oh, and that's too far. And there, and I think there's one more space. I'm going to use the space bar. Nope. Okay, then back. It works. It works until you update your resume next time, and then he finishes. So we're going to just say now 2020, he's graduated. And then now you've got to kind of go back here and keep spacing it because you don't have as much text. So what you actually want to do instead is create your left tab, sorry, your right tab, right justification. So I want that date to sit on the far right of my page at my margin. So what I need to use is my tabs. If you click over here just in this tiny little corner, this is the quick way to do it. And at this point, I don't even know if I remember the long way to do it anymore. I know you can go into paragraph settings and tabs. But if you click here, right now, the little L here is set for a left tab. So if I click again, it sets for a center tab. If I click again, it sets for a right tab. So then if I click my mouse up here where I want that right tab to be, it will take my text there. And I want it right at the edge. Does that make sense to everybody? So then again, I want to make sure all of my dates look like that. So first I'm going to copy the way that this heading looks and make the next heading look the same. Just get that done and out of the way. And I'm going to highlight and bold his job title. So now I've got job title, place he worked, location, and I've got a date that I want to put over here. I don't know if I actually made it clear when I did it up the first time, but this only works. You actually have to have pressed tab once. So now it's trying to find the tab. It automates to that sort of 1.5 centimeter space, but then you can tell it where to go. So I want to tell it again to go over here. I'm still set for a right tab. I click up here. I usually click somewhere about here instead of trying to hit there, because then sometimes I hit the white mark and it doesn't actually work. So I go there and then I move it to the final edge. I did just see a question come up, and it was about how did I claim that. If I got the question right, you're asking how I copied this. So if you select some text and you want other text to look like it, I've got it highlighted. I hit the format painter. You can also do Control-Shift-C to copy a format and Control-Shift-V to paste a format. So I've clicked on my format painter. I also want the work experience to look the same way. So I'm going to click on it. That didn't work because I hit it twice. Shoot. So click it once and then click on the line you want to change, and it's going to change to look the same. So here I am again. I want this line to look the same. So bold the name, leave these plain, and I want this over here. So again, make sure I'm still set, but I haven't changed it, so I'm still set for a right tab. And click where I want that tab to be. So now my dates look all fancy. Oh, you know what I've got here? It jumped to another line, and I'll tell you why. It's because I didn't realize that I had probably pressed tab twice. And so then it would, the first tab takes it to the end of that line, and if you hit tab again, it takes it to the end of the next line. So I had clearly pressed tab twice without realizing it. So there, I've got a start. To make those volunteer positions look slightly better though, I've got the titles, I've got the space. I'm going to make these into bullet points instead of just sort of floating sentences. So again, I can go into my bullets. I can just hit it and see what it does. That looks fine. I don't mind. But actually what I've done up here is I have some little block spacers in between different items, in between his address and his email and then his phone number. So I'm going to do that same look instead. Instead of a round bullet, I want the same shape. So I can go into my bullet options, and I'm going to choose that one instead. So then they sort of match. I can use those same shapes to separate here if I want. I can use a comma here, but if I want to make it look fancy, I can insert another little block in there. I can do it, of course, by copying and pasting, but I'll also show you where they come from to begin with. So I want to insert a special character. So I'm going to go Insert, Symbol. It's bringing up ones that I've used somewhat recently, but you can also go into More Symbols and it brings up all of them. Slowly, here we go. And it just brings up every font and all the symbols, so you can look for, wingdings or fonts that are all symbols and not actually letters, and see what you've got. I always recommend don't go crazy, don't go fancy. Like, you're still much better off with a simple look, because if you just add too many figures and shapes, it just starts to look a bit kitschy and not professional. So I still stick to arrows, dots, blocks, occasionally a check mark, occasionally, a more fancy arrow, and that's only if I think that the style of the resume and the target audience is appropriate. So I'm just going to insert the block, the cube, and close. Oh, I did not leave spaces. I deleted them by mistake, but give a space before and after. And then to do it again here, don't delete spaces. I can just go into Symbol. I won't show you the whole menu, and it's there because I just used it, and add another one. So simple. Do the same. Bold these. I'm deliberately not using like shortcut keys or anything, just because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. I mean, obviously, if you also want to bold that, you can just Control B, and it will do the same thing. Now I'm just looking at this, and I didn't notice it before, but if anybody else is seeing it, this line is larger text than the others. So that's sometimes hard to see, but I did happen to notice it, so I'm just going to hit the decrease font size and bring it down to 11 like the others. I'm going to copy this again, so highlight, Format Painter, highlight. Okay, I will do the same thing to get my bullets. So Format Painter, and then it gives me the same bullets. I'm going to use the same ones under the jobs as I use under volunteering. And I don't need bullets there because it's just a list. Oh, and these also have to be, there we go. Now I'll show you something again. I've been using the Format Painter. You can also use Format Painter to paint the same tab. So I can hit this and do this, and it gives me my tab, but you'll also notice that it gave me bold through it for the whole line. Because when you do the Format Painter that way, it picks up whatever is the format of that first word, that first letter actually, to be honest, if the letter happened to be different. So it's giving me bold for that whole line. Not a huge problem.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What if you adjust Format Painter Summer 2020 and then hit Summer 2019 instead of the whole line? Is that possible?
No, because it doesn't pick up the tab, it only picks up the font. But I will show you how you can do it. So I'm going to take that tab. I'm just going to undo. That'll be an easy way to do it. So instead, if I hit Format Painter here, and then instead of having my arrow there where I'm going to hit the entire line, I want to pull that closer until it changes and I see the little paintbrush. And then I'm going to click. And then it just does the tab. I won't tell you how long it took me to figure that out, but I'm glad I know now. I don't even remember how I figured it out, but I know now. So yeah, this is looking pretty good. I mean, if I had a whole lot of time and to show you absolutely all the fancy stuff, I could add some boxes and fun stuff, but this is sort of your basics. if I was doing this resume for a client or for my friend Max or whoever, I wouldn't send it like this because, as you see, I have two little lines spilling over onto the next page, and I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is sort of play with my space here and make those fit. So if you see here, here's a line with extra space because I don't think I actually went in. No, I didn't. It's still giving me the extra space. Oops. So I'm going to get rid of that. And that gives me a little bit of extra space there. And then the other thing I can do is after this heading and before the next thing, I've got a whole full line, but I could instead decide to say, I'm just going to use an 8-point line. I'm going to use a slightly shorter line, empty line there after all of these. The key is consistency. If you're doing, whether it's a resume or a report or a memo or anything, if you're going to change a heading in one place, you have to change it everywhere. So I've made that 8-point. So I'm going to change this one, and I'm going to go here, hit the decrease, and go down to 8. Oops, not there. Here, hit the decrease, down to 8, and there. So I've just made myself a little bit of space, and I've squeezed those two lines onto the one page. And I did it without, I didn't crowd the document. I just found places where I could take a tiny bit of space at a time and give myself a little bit of extra room. And to be honest, if I had to squeeze one more page like these, I think it's still set on, still set on multiple, so I can make a little bit more room there. I could have slightly less room between the jobs, so I could take that down, let's say to 8, and that. So there's often tiny little ways that you can make things fit, and the key is just to be consistent. Don't change it here and not change it there, because if you start having mismatched bits of white space, same as mismatched font sizes, it'll start to mess with the eyes. So the reader is going through it, and they don't necessarily know that the spaces are different. They don't have that kind of eyesight, but their eyes know that something's not right. So you want to make sure that your spacing is consistent throughout a document. So then I'm going to do one more thing to show you some more things. And I'm just going to actually pretend that his resume is longer. So I'm going to copy, Control-C, and just kind of give him a whole bunch of extra jobs. So there we go. And give him some more skills and workshops and stuff. What else? Maybe a second degree. We're just going to make this a little bit bigger. So there, Max just got some serious promotions. So now I've got a 2-page resume and my cover letter. What I want to show you now is page numbering. And so I'm going to show you how you would do it in this circumstance. And then the same idea applies to any document, of course. Here I've got a letter attached to a resume, which is often the way they want you to do it. They'll tell you in the instructions, send your cover letter and your resume in one document. So I would not usually choose to do it this way, but I know that you often have to, so I've learned how to do it. So then I've got letter, I've got page 1 of the resume, and I've got page 2 of the resume. It is always recommended to number pages and to include your name at the top of page 2, just in case. More and more nowadays, people are reading them online or on screen anyway, but near the end of the process, when you're doing the interviews and you're doing final screening, often they're printed. As soon as something is printed, pages can get separated. So if suddenly they have your letter and only page 2, or something is gone wrong, you want them to be able to look at any page, figure out who this document belongs to, and put it back together. So essentially always have your name at the top of the page and a page number. So I like to do it at the top in the header. And sorry, I should have actually told you what I was doing when I just did that, but if you put your cursor at the top of the page and double click, you open the header. Nice and easy. The other way to do that, of course, is to be just on the page, go up into your menus under layout. And did I just forget how to do this? I do this sometimes. Insert, sorry, go up to the top of the page into insert, and you can see header right here. So you can insert a header, you click on it, and you can get various presets. I like to make my own because that way I know it's right and the way I like it. So I always blank. And I delete their form right away. So I want to put Max's name here. Sorry, Max, I forget your last name. Samson. And then you can go page. You can do it in a number of ways, but let's just say one way. So Max Samson, comma, page, and then you're going to insert a page number. Top of page, bottom of page, page margins. Current position is what you want because you want it to go right where your cursor currently is. And it's saying page 3, except this is not page 3 of the resume. It's actually just page 3 of the document. So I don't want it to say page 3. So I'm going to go into page number again, format page numbers. And I'm going to change the start number. Instead of starting at 1, I want it to start at 0. I want my letter to be page 0 because then I have page 1 of the resume and then I have page 2 of the resume. And so now it's page 0, page 1, page 2, which is what I want. So what I don't want is a header here because it has its own header. I don't want a header on my letter because it has its own header. So I'm going to go back down to where I want the header, which is here on page 2. And I'm in my header menu, which popped up as soon as I opened it. And I'm going to tell it that I want a different first page. And I want different odd and even pages. So page 1 is going to be different than page 2. Of course, it decided to stick with page 1. So I'm going to actually cut and paste that from here. Sometimes for reasons I can't explain, it will move it. I want it here. So there, I have my header now on the page where I want it, Max Samson, page 2. What I like to do is then add some contact details. So if you look at the top here, even though I asked for a blank header, it's actually given me one with 3 tabs. So I'm going to skip the middle tab, and I'm going to go to the left tab. And I'm going to pull it to the side. And then I want to put his email address and his phone number here so that, again, if this page gets separated, top of the page is his name and his contact details. So I'm actually going to get out of my header temporarily because I don't want to make a mistake and type this in wrong. So I'm going to copy them. In this case, I'm just choosing randomly because you don't usually have 2 different emails and phone numbers on a resume. I could copy both of those in, but for the sake of demonstration, that's not important. So let's go back down to the page where I want my header, double click, I'm over in the space where I want it, I paste it in, and there we go. We've got Max Samson, page 2, email, and phone. I'm going to make it look slightly nicer and more like the top of the other page by bolding that. I'll hit the increase and make his name just a little bigger, and I'm going to put that same line underneath. I think the settings should still be right. It is, because I haven't changed it, and so there now he's got a line. And then click twice outside of there to close it, and page 2 has a nice little header. Page 1 doesn't, and the first page doesn't. So there you are. I'm trying to think, I feel like there was one more thing that I had wanted to show you, and now it's not coming to me, so I'm just going to scroll back up through and decide. Now you can, obviously, the same way I just did the header, you can do a little footer. I actually know a guy who he's a professional resume writer who I used to work with, and he would always have a line at the bottom of every page. He just liked it. So you go into the footer and insert that line. And let's go here. We've already set on different odd and even pages and different first page. So in this case, that's only going into the first page footer. You can see here first page footer. We want to insert it on every page, so we're going to also insert it in the odd page footer and in the even page footer. And again, so you get a nice little line at the bottom of each page, not necessary, but just another little sort of design trick that you can do that for certain documents and certain styles works really well. And so there's my quick and easy tips to format and make your document look better. There are so many others. This is a really basic overview, and at this point I'm open to any questions or other things that you wish you knew how to do. We're going to close the recording first, just so it's not too chaotic. But thank you so far. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. You probably know how to do your justifications. You could make your paragraphs here, of course, all fully justified with your either Control-J or hit the Justify button there, and then it just looks a little sharper. And you can bold and underline, but these are the things that I assume you probably know how to do. And there you are, voila, magic. Thanks for coming, thanks for listening, and we'll be open to questions in a moment.